Kalispera σας. Ronya Pola. I could go on, but I'm limited. Your Eminence, first of all, thank you. Thank you so much for your words tonight, for being here, for your leadership within the community. We spent much of yesterday together in Montreal at the Greek parade in the heart of my riding, and I have to say, as always, your counsel and your advice to me was most appreciated. He's been giving me good advice since before I was in politics, and turned out okay. I followed him most of the time, so we're doing well. But your leadership within the community, the stories you told me of my father, but also the impact you've had on shaping not just the strength of the Greek community in Canada, in Toronto, but also in Canada is significant. So thank you for everything you do, Your Eminence. Vassy, it's great to see you here. I know in her day job, her job is to ask the tough questions and challenge democratic leaders and push us on making sure we're giving the right answers to Canadians. But every single day you wear your pride as a Greek Canadian on your sleeve, and it's wonderful to see a Greek Canadian excelling at the highest levels of media and journalism. And a reminder of how important the Hellenic values are to the concept of democracy. But I'll come back to that in a little later. But it's great to see you, Vassy. And Kyriakos, my friend, thank you. Thank you for being the first Prime Minister in over 40 years of Greece to come to Canada. The last time it happened, I won't say anything more, but it took a Trudeau the last time to bring the Prime Minister over, and it's a real pleasure to continue in that family tradition. I have to say, I got to spend the day with him yesterday in not just in my hometown of Montreal, but in my riding in Montreal. Curiosity, how many members of the Greek Canadian community here tonight trace their path through Montreal? Yeah. I know there's a deep connection between the Hellenic community in Montreal and the one here in the GTA, and it's always a pleasure to be able to make sure that we're celebrating strongly in both communities. The Independence Day parade yesterday was wonderful with the Prime Minister. A few years ago, during the COVID challenges, he actually zoomed in for a 200th anniversary celebration of the Greek Independence Day. And of course, at the end of that, as one does, I said, this is wonderful to do it on Zoom, but you should really come here in person. He said, yes, I will. And then when I saw him the very next time at the next international summit, he said, so when do I get to come to Canada? And he was like, it wasn't just a politician's word. Here he is. He was serious about coming back to Canada. And I have to say, the friendship that we've been able to develop over the past years, being so aligned on so many big issues. Kyriakos was just in Ukraine a few weeks ago. I was there a couple of weeks earlier, where we know that standing up for the rules-based order, standing up for the rights of people to choose their own future, standing up against those who would destabilize the rule of law and international law is something that we both agree for, and we will all continue to stand on. So thank you, Kyriakos, for that. We connected as well on the fact that there is a tremendous pride for both of us to see how extraordinarily vibrant and dynamic the Hellenic Canadian community is. 270,000 people from coast to coast to coast contributing in every way to this country is truly an extraordinary thing. Thank you for everything that you do every day. Yesterday in Montreal, we got to go around a number of small businesses, a number of Greek community leaders were there, and really demonstrating to him how engaged and active and contributing not just within the community, but across all levels of Canadian society and the economy is a real pride, and seeing how well this community is flourishing, but also how strongly proud this community remains of its roots is exceptional. The amount of conversations you had in Greek, the amount of conversations you had also in French in Montreal really highlights just how both integrated and grounded in your Hellenic identity this community is, and it's a real inspiration to all Canadians. We connect on issues of growing the economy, issues of investing in a strong future. The turnaround that Prime Minister Mitsotakis has been responsible for in Greece is nothing short of miraculous. You have led through some very, very challenging times, but to see Greece do so incredibly well is a real credit to your leadership. Even as the world goes through challenging economic times, there are always good news in different places for families. At the same time as we're facing similar challenges, both last summer, Greece and Canada faced historically bad wildfires, and we come together not just to support each other in fighting those wildfires and fighting against climate change, but on a concrete agreement that we signed yesterday where Greece will be purchasing 7 firefighting planes that will be built right here in Canada. It's another way of us working together as we always have. They're updating their fleet. They've been flying Canadian water bombers for close to 50 years. So it's great to be able to continue to invest as we move forward. And on the international stage, whether it's as NATO allies, whether it's as fellow democracies, we continue to step up as partners. We're seeing tremendous investments by Canadians into Greece, but also by Greeks into Canada. The investments, particularly in renewables in southern Alberta, is a remarkable story. There are so many more things we can do together as countries that it is great to be connecting here. But we also have to reflect on the fact that we are in extraordinarily challenging times, not just here in Canada, but all around the world, where inflation, where climate change, where the after effects still of the pandemic, where geopolitical destabilization, whether it's wars and conflicts around the world, let's be honest, are throwing everyone for a little bit of a loop. And right now, we're seeing, because of all the pressures everyone is under, a challenge to our democracies, a backsliding of democracies in every corner of the world as people are exploiting fear and anger and extreme nationalism and populism to distract from the solutions we need to put forward to very, very real problems we're facing. And I can't be with the Hellenic community without reflecting on the fact that you know well, more than just about anyone else, having been the birthplace of democracy, that democracy didn't happen by accident. It doesn't continue without effort. And that effort is one that each and every one of us need to make as active, engaged citizens, taking an interest in what's happening in our communities, what's an interest in what's happening in our country, and indeed around the world. And I know with the conversations that are being had about how the Hellenic community is so proud of its heritage, and Prime Minister Mitsotakis will be encouraging you to engage as well in the politics back home. And I think it's a good idea, because how we all step up to actively be part of making those tough decisions that build a better world is, quite frankly, what this community has been able to do for decades here in Canada, and making sure that your voice is resonating around the world, bringing more of these Greek values, more of these Canadian values to bear on the solutions the world is facing, leaves me very, very optimistic for the future. So it is an incredible pleasure for me to be able to be here with you all tonight, and mostly to welcome my good friend, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, Prime Minister of Greece. Zito Ialadas, Zito Kapelos. Last night I introduced him. This time you have.
Got it. I have the honor this time. Thank you, Prime Minister Trudeau. I think the Prime Minister's Greek is better than mine. My goodness. It is my great pleasure and honor to introduce Prime Minister Mitsotakis and for the Prime Minister to address us in the audience.
Thank you, thank you. Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Χρόνια πολλά. Your Eminence, Σεβασμιότατε, thank you so much for your inspiring words, but thank you for the leadership you have provided to the Greek-Canadian community. Your journey truly has been remarkable. Thank you so much for everything you've done. And Vassyliki, thank you for hosting this event. And Justin, you were right, because I had an opportunity to give a short interview, and she certainly treated me with the necessary firmness. There were no easy questions, but you were right, Justin, when you pointed out that you wear your Greek-Canadian heritage very proudly on your sleeve, as all of you do. So thank you so much for hosting today's event. And to my good friend, the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, you're right to point out that it was your father who brought over to Canada the last Greek Prime Minister. It was just the wrong Prime Minister. He should have brought over Konstantinos Mitsotakis and not Andreas Papandreou. But I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be with you here today to celebrate Independence Day. And indeed, it is the first time that I have decided to celebrate Greek National Independence Day outside Greece. Normally, I'm in Athens at the big military parade, but this year I decided to make an exception. I decided to be with you here in Canada, and boy, was this the right decision. And indeed, this is an important day for Greeks, but it is also, I think, an important day for all freedom-fighting nations, because it is probably worthwhile reflecting exactly what happened 203 years ago when the Greek nation rose up against the all-powerful Ottoman Empire and against all odds managed to win its freedom. And this freedom it has defended for more than 2 centuries, and through the ebbs and flows of history, through triumphs and disasters, Greece has progressed. It has moved in the right direction. It was always, with Canada, on the right side of history. And part of our history is also the history of emigration. It is the history of those Greeks in difficult times, your parents, your grandfathers, who decided to leave Greece in search of a better future. And many of those decided to make Canada their second home. And I think they chose wisely, because you have indeed progressed, you have become part of this great nation, but you have also kept alive your Greek heritage, your regional heritage. It is such a pleasure to be able to see all the dancers with all their regional costumes. And yesterday, at this lovely parade in Montreal, I saw a vibrant Greek community, proud of its heritage, but also proud of being Canadian. And what Canada has done to incorporate not just the Greek community, but all national communities into this beautiful country, while making sure that they maintain their national heritage, cherish their roots, celebrate their history, is truly a remarkable story. So I pay tribute to all of those who are present here today, who keep Greece in your heart, but sing, both national anthems with the same vigor and with the same enthusiasm. Yours is truly a remarkable. And when I reflect on the progress that Greece has recently made, I should point out that we also went through a very difficult period during the second decade of the 21st century, when essentially the country went bankrupt. It had to go through multiple bailout programs. It was considered by many, and for many years, the black sheep of Europe. And when we took over, we had a very clear plan in 2019 to restore sustainable growth, to create jobs, to lower taxes, to make Greece an investor-friendly country. And I think to a great extent we have succeeded in that mission. But what is probably most important for me than me, and this means more than all the statistics and all the GDP numbers and all the unemployment figures, is what people tell me abroad. Σας ευχαριστώ που μας ξανακάνατε υπερήφανους για την πατρίδα μας. Thank you for making us again proud of being Greek. And this is the biggest reward. It's the biggest reward for me and my team. And today, in Toronto, I had a chance to meet with leaders of the Canadian business community. Many Canadian companies have already invested in Greece. They've been very successful in doing so. I am sure that as a result of this trip and as a result of me and my team talking more about the economic success of Greece, we will be able to further strengthen, dear Justin, our economic ties, our trade ties, our investment flows, convince more Canadian companies to be part of the Greek success story, but also, why not, convince more Greek businesses to invest in Canada, because maybe not many of you know that there is a Greek company that is currently interested in developing the largest photovoltaic plant in Canada, $1.2 billion of investment. This is also testimony to Greek companies being more extrovert, investing more abroad, and further strengthening this amazing partnership. And of course, there are many things that bind us together. Fighting challenge of climate change is one of them. Prime Minister mentioned that we both our countries went through catastrophic wildfires last year. We agree that we need to invest more, not just in long-term mitigation effort, but also in short-term adaptation measures. And that is the reason why we chose to place our trust again in Canadian water bombers. We're purchasing 7 of those. Will be constructed by de Havilland right here in Canada. An initiative funded partly by the European Union, and this is only the first order of 24 in total, which will be purchased by 5 European countries in order to create a pool of resources that we can share also during the difficult summer periods. But of course, with Canada, we also cooperate on other issues. We are faced with, as Justin said, with momentous challenges. For us in Europe, it is so painful to realize that war has returned to the continent. You're still further away, protected by the Atlantic Ocean, but what has happened in Europe was inconceivable 5 years ago. Yet now we are faced with a war of aggression, and it is imperative for all Western liberal democracies to stand side by side, defend the rules-based international order, send a clear signal that no violation of international borders by force can be tolerated. This is the reason I was in Ukraine, Justin was in Ukraine. We stand by the Ukrainian people in their fight to defend themselves and fight for their freedom. And of course, the other challenges we face is how do we make our democracies stronger? We know something about democracy because it was the ancient Athenians who invented this so unique concept 2,500 years ago that at the end of the day it is no king, no emperor, no pharaoh who rules over people, but it is people themselves who take the decisions to rule themselves and take their future into their own hands. And liberal democracies are facing challenges these days. They're facing challenges from disinformation, misinformation. The war against fake news is a war that we all need to fight together. The war against deepfakes, which are coming, will be part of our next elections, is something which requires a global response, us working together, but also teaming up with the big technology companies and making them also responsible for protecting the integrity of our democratic process. But of course, at the end of the day, democracy, and let me conclude with this remark, is about participation. The more people participate in the democratic process, the greater the legitimacy of the election results. And this is important because for those of you who actually have a right to vote in Greece, we managed to do something which is very, very important. For many decades, I remember I studied in the United States for 7 years. I've been very close to the American diaspora. There was always one request. Why do we have to return to Greece in order to be able to vote? Well, that has changed. You can vote in the next European election by posting in your ballot. So if you're interested, please register and participate in these elections. It is important for us to make this project a success, and I am sure that this will happen, and we will continue to support the diaspora and strengthen the ties between the motherland and those of you who are going through great effort to make sure that you educate your children, your grandchildren, that your children speak the language. I full respect to what the local communities, both in Montreal and in Toronto, are doing. You really run extremely well-organized schools. Now we also have more technological tools at our disposal. There is a great tool called Stylinica, which was actually developed by Simon Fraser University that allows children or adults to learn Greek remotely through a very sophisticated computer interface. So we will continue to stand by you. We have for the first time a national strategy for our diaspora. And our diaspora is such an incredible asset. And let me conclude by a remark. I thought about this while I was doing a fireside chat over lunch, and Mr. Nanos, who interviewed me, asked me a question: what would you like your legacy to be, when you retire? I can tell you, as active politicians, we very rarely think about those things. We have enough, we have our hands full with day-to-day management. But I thought that maybe the best legacy would be to have a country where young people never ever are forced to leave the country by necessity and will only leave the country by choice. This is a Greece I envision, and this is a Greece we're all working towards. So again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your engagement. Χρόνια πολλά. Ζήτω η Ελλάδα. Ζήτω ο Καναδάς.